Good evening, fellow Plexers. Today we're going to try to help Eric, who's having trouble with his music library, with a post he made in the Plexaholics Facebook group, and it concerns the Star app for music. And I made a conscious decision not to feature the Star apps on my YouTube channel. I want to keep it strictly Plex support, and we can do that. Doesn't matter where he sourced his music from. Let me bring in a screenshot from the Facebook post. I'll bring it partially on so we don't give his last name away. So, some automatic music in his library did not scan right. So we see section 80, we see life, and it's pretty easy to determine this is a Neil Young and Crazy Horse album from 1987, and this is a section 80 album from 2011. So what I've done for this video is I've sourced those three albums 3 times each, 3 different sources. And I've just labeled them simply -1, -2, -3, and again, 1 through 3. So before we start, whenever you're playing with a Plex music library, the Discogs website is pretty valuable if you want to search for music to see when it was released and that kind of stuff. With a movie library, you could use TMDB or IMDb. With a TV show library, you could use either TMDB or TVDB. This is my resource for a music library. The biggest resource is MusicBrainz Picard. It's a free program. You can install it under Linux like I'm running, on the Mac OS or Windows. Totally free. So we'll show you how to check metadata for a album you've just ripped or for one that fell off the back of the truck, if you know what I mean. So let me drag in the first album for section 80 by Kendrick Lamar. The first thing you do in MusicBrainz Picard after you drag it into the left pane is you cluster it. And let me make this full screen. So then you can click on the section 80 part, or you can expand to the individual songs. But let's stay on the whole album. Below will show us the matching metadata. So the title is 15 different titles across the whole album. But the artist is Kendrick Lamar. The album is section .80. The track number is different for every item. So if I click into one of them, you'll see how the track name is now in it, and it tells you the track number of 3. So let's go back to the main grouping. The date's 2011, the album artist is Kendrick Lamar, and it's disc number 1. This, and that is all the matching metadata you really need for Plex to make a library match when it scans the media in. MusicBrainz Picard can bring more robust metadata, and you simply hit the scan button and you'll see these decreases as they're added to the right, 14, 15, and if you see the gold CD, that means it's a perfect match. And if I expand it, the green tab means it's perfect. If I click onto it, now you'll see how much more robust the metadata is. Plex can't help but match something with this much metadata. So if I drag it back over to the left and cluster it again, this still has enough info to make a match, but it's more robust by dragging it back over, and you simply select the album and hit save, and you've got little green check marks. So now if I remove this and I drag it back in, it won't even show up in the left pane. MusicBrainz Picard knows it's got robust metadata, and you see the check marks again. So let's see what we find with the second version. So I dragged it into the left pane. I'll hit cluster. and then I'll select the whole album and not the individual songs. Well, now we see we have less metadata. We still have the matching artist name, the matching album name, a date for all the songs. That should be enough to match it, but there's no embedded album artwork. So if we scan this, there is enough information to make a match to the actual album. And again, we've got the gold CD, but now we've got some yellow markers. So if we click on this third track that's green, we'll see it's a close enough match. It's 3 minutes and 36 seconds for this track, and it's expected to be 3 minutes and 35. That's enough of a match. But now if we click on the yellow one, for some reason it's a questionable match, but we can manually make sure it's great. So the original title has featuring somebody, where the official database doesn't say the same thing. And that's probably why the yellow's there. The same thing. We've got a little bit of difference between the original metadata and what it's supposed to be. Same thing again, and same thing there. So I'm not going to save this one. Let's remove it though. And now the third version. We'll hit cluster. So this has a little bit more metadata matched up, but not as much as the first one. And again, we'll scan it. And if we look while it scans, well, too late now. So this is all green. Different shades of green means different levels of a sure match. Dark green would be better than light green. What a nice song title. But you'll see why that's lighter green. There's an asterisk instead of the U. So let's see. No makeup, her vice, but there's a hyphen here. That might be why it's a lighter color green. So you kind of get what's going on here. And I could save that too, but I won't. All right, let's use our 3 examples for the Life album. I'll cluster. Okay, so this looks pretty good. A lot of metadata. Neil Young and Crazy Horse, we need that. The album name, we need that. We need the year. But notice we still don't have embedded artwork. So we know it's a remastered release, the retail date, the RIP date, everything looks good. So let me scan this one. And this one's not matching up. Let's see what we can do here. Let me just say Neil Young Life. All right, so we've got the artist. And let's search by the name. We'll alphabetize things. And I'm not seeing anything for Life. So let's do this again. Neil Young and Crazy Horse Life. So I'm not hitting pay dirt. I do have this album called Life, but it's a red icon instead of the gold. So it looks like Neil Young and Crazy Horse Life. It really looks like it's a decent match, and we've got the embedded album artwork. But I'm not going to save that. Let's see if we run into the same issue with the other versions of this album. Cluster, just enough matching metadata that Plex would probably make a match, and let's scan. For whatever reason, this one matched up better. We got gold. So let me save this one. And now I'll try the third and last one. Cluster. This has got a lot of good metadata. So all we need again is the artist, the album, the date, number of CDs is nice. I don't see that here. But again, there's no embedded artwork. And that really doesn't matter too much as long as Plex makes a metadata match. If it doesn't make a metadata match, you'll need the embedded artwork to then display in Plex for an unlisted match. So let's scan this one. And that's another good match. It's gold. They're all the same color green. So let's save that one too. And now that it's saved, you'll just see all this extra metadata. So now I'm going to pause the video because I'm going to add each of these separately to a test Plex server. So let me get that set up so we can do it and continue recording. I'll be right back. And I'm back. So what I'm doing, I'm copying those 6 test albums to my older Synology NAS where I have a test server set up. So let me bring in the web app. And I got a bunch of friends and family streaming off my regular server. So this is on a DS1019 Plus Synology NAS. It has an 8th gen Celeron processor in it. It's still a capable Plex server, but for movies and shows that might need to be transcoded, it only has an HD Graphics 500 iGPU. That would be a little bit less than what I'd want to put in a modern server. I'd really want like an 8th gen through 10th gen Intel CPU at the base, but 11th gen would be the best. But this is still a capable server. It's filled with public domain media that I use for videos. And this was from another video. So let me scan the library. I've already removed that. So this is all public domain. What I'm going to add isn't. And this library is set up to scan automatically. So let's copy in this last one. Because I don't think I saved the metadata on that. All right, so it's scanning. And it looks like without having to have the metadata adjusted, it's scanned in fine. We've got the album artwork. And we know Plex has made the match because we see a description. If Plex was relying on just the embedded metadata because it could not find a match, you'd have no description, but you would see the artist name and the album name based on the embedded metadata along with the embedded poster. So really, that's the only difference between a matched album and an unmatched one, is the description. And you also have the record label and all that, but this stuff could be in the embedded metadata too, even though it may not be in the database for Plex to match to. All right, so let's remove this. Let's create a new folder and call it tested. All right, let's put this second one in as soon as this knows it's gone. Okay, it's gone. Let's paste it in. And I believe this one is the one that didn't have a lot of metadata attached to it. And again, Plex found it. But there's only 5 tracks with this one. I think we have more than 5 tracks. All right, so let's remove this one. Oh no, Plex is not making a good match because there's more than 5 tracks. Oh, I'm sorry, popular tracks. My mistake. We have 16 tracks. So even though that didn't have a lot of metadata, it was enough for Plex to make a match. So let's get that out of here now. And I'm not a professional YouTuber, and I don't script any of these videos. They're all just winged. All right, so it's removed. And let's see how this one adds. Got the activity going on. Now we do have a description, but now we don't have album artwork. Let's scan the library again. And refresh metadata. Okay, so a little work. We've got the artwork for the artist. So far, all these albums that fell off the back of a truck, with only a couple of them adjusted, seem to be adding fine. Okay, let's wait for that to go away. And let's try all of these. All right, we see the album life. It's a match because there's a description, and there's 9 tracks. So now let's try something different. Let's leave that in there, and let's add the second one. As far as I know, a Plex music library does not have an option to search for duplicate albums. It simply shows 2 of the same albums. And Plex won't know a US versus a UK release versus a Japanese release versus a German release. So if you have those, you'd have to go in and edit the metadata yourself and maybe put something like this, UK. And I have no idea if this is a UK version. I'm just making that up. So you'd have to manually manage that extra metadata yourself. Message. So let's remove both of those. Okay, that's gone, and let's try the last one. Oh, wrong folder. So whether I use MusicBrainz Picard to inject robust metadata or not, each of these examples had enough metadata to make a match. So Eric, that means whatever you've got does not have enough metadata, and it's easy to fix. You're just not going to be able to run the desktop version of MusicBrainz Picard on network storage. You'll have to bring it back locally to rename it. And it's really not that difficult. So while we're here, so you can comparison check, I'll go into the library settings. Under Advanced, make sure you're using the Plex Music Scanner and Plex Music Agent, not any other option. Everything here is default. Album sorting, newest first. Oh, I'm sorry. In my regular library, I do let it do the sonic analysis because my normal Plex server is on a modern i5 processor. This is about the only thing that'll slow down the old Celeron in this Synology NAS. I don't even check prefer local metadata. I could if I wanted to, and that would get the embedded or any external metadata. I don't store the track progress. This is checked, that's checked. Looks like everything's checked. This is all just default. So again, MusicBrainz Picard can be used to check to see if you've got enough metadata, and if you do, you don't have to match it up with something in MusicBrainz Picard for better metadata. And if we remove that, paste into folder, and I can bring those all back locally. Won't take that long. We'll get rid of the web app. Didn't realize that was open. We'll bring MusicBrainz Picard back. And again, it's just simply dragging it in. This one was the good metadata. Cluster that. Didn't have a lot of metadata, but it's enough. And again, it's not enough if it's an unlisted album. You'd want the album artwork. And let me show that. I showed this in other tutorial videos. If you had your own artwork, you could replace the front cover art by choosing a local file that you download yourself, and when you hit save, it'll just be there. So if you were creating your own custom mix CD, grabbing songs from different artists to put in its own folder, you could drag them all into MusicBrainz Picard, and you could give this mix album a special title. You could call it My Mix of Summer. You could change the artist to various artists. The album. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't want to change the title. You want to leave that different across all of them. My mistake. The album, you'd change. And you could put your own date in. And you could create a album artwork for the cover and drag that in, and when you hit save, it's got enough metadata that Plex will scan it in as an unlisted album. So Eric, that's about it. If you want to share some screenshots with me of your Star app setup, I'll certainly share screenshots back, but it could just be a minor issue. Whatever you brought in could have just not had enough metadata, and somehow Ladar missed it, because this really isn't much to fix. It's 2 albums from what I can see, unless you've got further down. If you more of them further down. So your source might have been poor. I grabbed what I could find for each album, which was 3 or 4 albums each, and they all had enough embedded metadata. Alright, thanks for watching, and happy plexing.